It all began with a man sitting down on a beach to rest, the most ordinary thing in the world. A warm evening, the last of the summer light going gold over the water, a quiet stretch of Adelaide sand. He leaned back against the seawall, crossed his ankles and let his head tip down toward his chest, the way a tired man does when he's only going to close his eyes for a minute. People walked past him. They thought he was drunk. They thought he was asleep. One couple watched a mosquito land on his face and saw him not move, not even to brush it away, and they decided he must be very, very tired. He was already dying, or he was already dead. To this day, no one can tell you which. By the next morning, he was cold against that wall, in a good suit with every single label cut out of it, with no wallet, no name, and no way home. And in a tiny hidden pocket sewn into his trousers, rolled up tight as a cigarette, was a scrap of paper torn from a book of poetry, 2 words printed on it. In Persian they mean, "It is finished." He had been carrying his own ending in his pocket. So get comfortable, turn the lights down low, pull the blanket up, and stay with me, because tonight's story is one of the strangest in the world, and after more than 70 years, it still doesn't have an ending you can hold. There's a body, there's a poem, there's a code no one has ever cracked. And there's a man who, even now that we may finally know his name, has somehow only become more of a mystery. If you like the cases that keep you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., the subscribe button is right there in the dark. I'll wait. Adelaide, 1948. The war is 3 years gone, but the country still carries it. In the rationing that's only just easing, in the men who came back wrong, in the new fear creeping in from the other side of the world, the one they're starting to call the Cold War. Out in the desert north of the city, in a place called Woomera, the British are quietly building a rocket range. Adelaide is a small, sleepy, sun-bleached city, and it is about to be handed a puzzle it will never solve. Somerton Beach sits just south of the city, a long, gentle curve of sand, a low stone seawall, a few houses behind it with their lights coming on. On the evening of November the 30th, it's the kind of place where families take an after-dinner walk to feel the breeze come off the Gulf, and there, against the wall, is the man. We need to see him, because for the longest time he was all anyone had. He's somewhere in his 40s, strong, fit in a particular, unusual way. When they examine him later, they'll find the high, taut calf muscles of a man who'd spent his life on his toes, the legs of a dancer, or a runner, or a man who wore boots with a heel. He's around 5'11", grey-blue eyes, fair hair going a little grey at the temples, clean-shaven recently. His hands are soft, not a labourer, and his body carries 2 small, rare marks that will matter far more than anyone could guess in 1948. His ears are an unusual shape, the upper hollow larger than the lobe, a feature only a fraction of people have, and he is missing 2 teeth he should have, the lateral incisors, never grown in at all, a quirk written into him before birth. Tiny things, the kind of details you'd never notice on a living man across a tram. The kind of details that 70 years later would help pull a name out of the dark. He's dressed beautifully for a man with no name. A white shirt, a brown knitted tie, brown trousers, polished brown shoes barely scuffed. Strange that, for a man who supposedly walked the sand. A smart double-breasted jacket. No hat, which in 1948 is itself a small wrongness. Like seeing a man today walk out of the house with no phone, and resting on his collar, fallen there, unsmoked down to half. A single cigarette, as if he'd lit it, taken one draw, and simply stopped. This is the man. Hold him in your mind. Because tomorrow morning the questions begin, and they never, ever stop. Let's walk his last known hours. What we can prove of them is thin, and that thinness is part of the horror. The morning of November the 30th, a man, we believe now it was him, arrives at Adelaide railway station. He's carrying a brown suitcase. He walks to the cloakroom, the place where travellers leave their bags for the day, and he checks it in. A clerk takes it, gives him a ticket, slides the case onto a shelf. It's 11 a.m. A perfectly ordinary transaction. Neither of them knows that case will sit there for days, then weeks, waiting for a man who is never coming back. Then he buys a train ticket. Destination, Henley Beach. He never uses it. It's found later in his pocket, unpunched. Instead, and remember this, because it's one of those small details that refuses to make sense, he takes a bus. A bus heading toward Glenelg, toward Somerton. Why buy a train ticket to one beach and then ride a bus to another? Nobody has ever explained it. And this is where it gets strange. It's barely even started yet, and the man is already contradicting himself. He gets a chewing gum somewhere. He has cigarettes. Though, here's an odd thing the police will catch later. The cigarette packet is a premium brand, but the cigarettes inside it are a cheaper brand, repackaged. A small disguise. A man hiding even his smoking. The afternoon goes quiet. We lose him for hours. The next time anyone can place him, it's early evening, and he's on the sand at Somerton, easing himself down against the seawall to rest. And now the slow walk begins. Except there's no one walking toward him that we can name. The danger, if there was danger, is already inside him, or already done. A jeweler and his wife out for the evening see him around 7. He's lying back, his right arm flung up oddly and then dropping. They think, a drunk, sleeping it off. They walk on. A young couple sees him around the same time. They notice he hasn't moved in 20 minutes. They notice the mosquitoes. They notice he doesn't brush them away. And one of them says, they'll remember saying it, he's probably just dead drunk. Probably just dead. They walk on too. And the tide of an ordinary evening carries every witness home to bed, leaving the man alone against the wall, under the stars, with the gulf breathing in and out beside him. Count it with me. The last morning he was seen alive and moving. Gone. The last evening anyone saw him breathing. Maybe gone. By sunrise, there's no maybe left. 6:30 in the morning, December the 1st. A man walking the beach with his horse. That's the detail. A horse on the morning sand. Sees the figure still slumped against the wall. The same position. He'd seen him there the night before too, and assumed, like everyone, that the man was sleeping. He's not sleeping. His head is tipped to the seawall. The half cigarette has slipped to his collar. His eyes are closed. He is, the doctor will say, several hours dead. And here is the moment the ordinary world tips over into the thing it will never come back from. Because when they go through his pockets, looking for the simplest thing, a name, they find a bus ticket, a train ticket, a comb, a packet of gum, cigarettes, a box of matches, and nothing else. No wallet, no ID, no letters, no photographs, no keys, no money to speak of. And then someone notices the clothes, the maker's labels, the little tags every suit and shirt carried in 1948 have all been carefully cut away, unpicked, removed. Someone went to the trouble of erasing this man before he ever lay down on that beach. So who cuts the labels out of their own clothes? Who carries a packet of one cigarette filled with another? Who travels to a city, locks a suitcase in a cloakroom and walks to the sea to die without a single thing on him that could say his name? What happened to bring him here? No one would ever fully know. But the question that morning was simpler and somehow worse. Not how did he die? Not even why. Just, who is this? And the door, you'll understand soon, was already bolted from the inside. They take him to the morgue, and the first place you'd expect answers, the body itself, only deepens it. The pathologist, a careful man named Dwyer, opens the case expecting something simple. He finds the opposite. The man's organs are deeply congested. His spleen is enlarged, 3 times normal. There's blood in his stomach. Every sign points one way, and Dwyer says it plainly. This man was poisoned. So they run the tests. The standard screens for every poison a 1948 laboratory knows how to find. Nothing. Not a trace. No barbiturate. No cyanide. No arsenic. Nothing. A man whose body screams poison and whose blood holds none that anyone can detect. The pathologist's conclusion is one of the strangest ever written into an Australian inquest. He believed the man was poisoned, most likely by something rare, something that breaks down fast and vanishes, something a person would need real knowledge to use. He was sure it was murder by poison, and he could not prove it at all. And remember, they still don't even have his name. So they cast his face in plaster to keep a record of him, and they bury the question for a while. But first they try the obvious doors, and one by one the doors stay shut. They take his fingerprints and send them everywhere, across Australia, then across the world, to Britain, to America, no match, anywhere. They circulate his face, his dental chart, his description, to police forces and newspapers in country after country. People come forward in their hundreds, certain the man is a missing brother, a husband who never came home, a son who walked out one day. Every single one of them is wrong. The man matches no living person and no missing one. It's as if he stepped into the world fully formed on the morning of November the 30th and out of it by the morning of December the 1st, and was attached to nothing in between. Then comes the suitcase. January. Someone connects the unclaimed brown case at the railway cloakroom to the unclaimed man at the morgue. They open it, and it's the same trick all over again. The labels cut out, almost everything that could carry a name gone. But not everything. On a few items a name survives the purge, stenciled or written in 3 slightly different forms. T. Keen, Keen, Keen. For one bright moment it looks like the answer. Then the police chase every Keen they can find across the country, alive and dead, and not one of them is missing. The name, it seems, was never really his, or so everyone assumed. Inside the case, more small wrongnesses, stacking up. A stenciling brush, the kind used by men who marked cargo on ships. A coil of waxed orange thread, an unusual American thread, and the very same thread, it turns out, repairing a seam in the dead man's trousers. A man with no name, mending his own clothes with a thread you couldn't buy in Australia. Every clue makes him stranger, not clearer. And then, months in, June 1949, the detail that turns this from a sad mystery into a legend. A pathologist re-examines the clothing one more time, and in the man's trousers there's a tiny fob pocket, a watch pocket, almost hidden in the waistband. Reach in, and there's a scrap of paper rolled up tight. They unroll it. 2 words, printed in an ornate typeface. Tamam Shud. It's Persian. It's the last line of one of the most famous poems ever written. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century meditation on wine and time and the shortness of life. The line is the very ending of the book. It means it is finished, it is ended. The man had torn the last words from a book about how life slips away and sewn them into a secret pocket and carried them to the sea. That should have been the deepest the case could go. It wasn't. Because now the police needed the book those 2 words were torn from, and somewhere in Adelaide it turned up. A man walks into the police station. Months back, he says, he'd found a copy of the Rubaiyat in the back seat of his car, his unlocked car, parked near Somerton Beach right around the time the man died. He'd assumed a friend dropped it. He'd thought nothing of it. He'd just shoved it in the glove box and forgotten it, until he read the papers. They checked the book. The last page is torn, and the torn edge matches the scrap from the dead man's pocket. Exactly. This is the book. A mini answer at last, a thread to pull. And then they turn to the back of it, and it yanks the floor away again. Because penciled faintly in the back of that book are 2 things. The first is a phone number. The second is 5 lines of capital letters. No spaces that make sense. No words anyone can read. Just block letters, marching across the page like the start of a sentence in a language that doesn't exist. A code, handwritten in the back of a dead man's poetry book. They photograph it. They send it to the Navy's best ciphermen, the people who broke enemy codes in the war. And the experts come back and say, we can't break it. We're not even certain it is a code. To this day, with 70 years of mathematicians and spies and obsessives and supercomputers thrown at it, those letters have never been read. We're going to come back to the phone number, because the phone number is where this stops being strange and starts being haunting. 4 ways to read a dead man with no name. Each one fits until the moment it doesn't. Let the listener play detective. I'll save the one that chills me most for last. First theory, the secret agent. Look at the shape of it. 1948. The Cold War tightening. A secret rocket range in the desert nearby. A man with the labels cut from his clothes. A cheap cigarette in an expensive packet. A fake-looking name. A hidden scrap of poetry. And an uncrackable code in the back of a book. A book code, using a shared copy of a famous text as a key, is a real espionage technique. It was the perfect spy's tool. Untraceable, deniable, hidden in plain sight on any bookshelf in the world. And the rare, fast-vanishing poison? The kind of thing assassins were rumored to use. It's the theory everyone wants. And here's the fact that breaks it. In all the decades since, no intelligence agency, no defector, no opened archive anywhere in the world has ever produced a single document that mentions this man. Spies leave paper, even the secret ones. This man left a code no one can read and absolutely nothing else. And this is where it gets strange. He may simply be too mysterious to have been a real spy. The real ones aren't this perfect. Second theory, he took his own life. The words in his pocket point straight at it. It is ended. A man writes his own closing line, rolls it up, hides it like a private decision, and lies down by the sea. Quiet, deliberate, a poem for a goodbye. It's the simplest reading and the saddest. But if a man removes every label, hides his name, mends his trousers with foreign thread, repackages his cigarettes, and dies of a poison no laboratory on earth can find, that is not the work of a man who wants peace. That is the work of a man who is hiding, or being hidden. You don't erase your own identity to die comfortably. You do it because you're afraid of being known, or because someone needs you never to be known. Third theory, the jilted lover. This one starts with the phone number in the back of the book, because the police called it. It belonged to a young woman, a nurse, who lived a short walk from the very stretch of beach where the man was found. For decades the world knew her only by a nickname, Jestin. Her real name was Jessica, and during the war she had given a copy of this exact poem, the Rubaiyat, to a soldier she'd known, a gift, a romantic one. So the police tracked that soldier down, certain they'd found their dead man at last. And he opened his front door, alive, holding his own copy of the poem, the one she'd given him, complete, with its last page intact. Not our man, but the nurse. When the detectives brought her to see the plaster cast of the dead man's face, when they pulled the cloth back, witnesses said she went pale, that she looked for a moment like she might faint, that she seemed to recognize something, and then she said, "No, I don't know him." She would say it for the rest of her life. She lived for decades more, and she never once admitted knowing who he was, even as her own family came to believe she did. She took whatever she knew into the ground. What she truly recognized in that face, no one will ever fully know. So was he a man who came across a country to find a woman who would not claim him? A lover turned away at the very last? It's the most human theory of them all, and its fatal flaw is also the most human thing about it. The only person who could confirm it chose, for 50 years, to say nothing. And the fourth theory, the one that arrived last, and chills me the most, because it was supposed to be the answer. 2021, after 73 years, they exhumed him, and a physicist named Derek Abbott, who had chased this case for half his life, did something no detective in 1948 could dream of. He took hairs that had been set into the plaster of the death mask, hairs from the actual body, and he pulled DNA from them. He worked with a brilliant American forensic genealogist, and together they built a family tree from the fragments, and they followed it back and back to a single name. In 2022, they announced it. The Somerton man, they said, was Carl Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker, born in Melbourne in 1905, a real man with a real family who had simply dropped out of every record around 1947, the year before he died, and was never reported missing by anyone. You'd think a name would close it. It opened a trapdoor instead. Because here is what the name gave us. Carl Webb wrote poetry, his own, and almost all of it, according to the woman who divorced him, was about one subject: death. His ex-wife told a court he had written many poems on the theme of death, which he claimed to be his greatest desire. A man who longed for death found dead with a poem in his pocket that says it is ended. And still, that explains almost nothing. We have a name. We do not know why Carl Webb, a Melbourne man, travelled across to Adelaide. We do not know how he died. The poison the pathologist swore he saw has never been identified to this very day. We do not know why he cut every label from his clothes. We do not know what the code in the back of the book says, or who wrote it, or whether it's a code at all. We do not know what the nurse saw in that plaster face. We do not know if she ever met Carl Webb, or why his number or her number ended up penciled beside an uncrackable cipher in a book of Persian poetry left in a stranger's unlocked car beside the sea. And here is the smallest, quietest, most devastating fact of all. Even now, after the DNA, after the family tree, after the headlines that said solved, the authorities in South Australia have never officially confirmed it. The case, on paper, is still open. The man on the beach is still, in the eyes of the law, unknown. We dug him up, gave him back his name, and the mystery didn't even blink. So picture it one last time. The warm evening, the gold light going out over the Gulf, a man in a good suit with no name in it, sitting down against a seawall to rest, with the last line of a poem about endings rolled up tight in a secret pocket over his heart. People walking past, people assuming, people going home to bed. It is finished, the paper said. It never was. If you have a theory about the code, about the nurse, about the poison no one could find, I am reading the comments. I read every one. Until then, the door stays bolted, the letters stay unread, and the man on Somerton Beach keeps his last secret the way he kept it for 70 years. Calmly, completely, and just out of reach. Sleep well, if you can. I'll see you in the next one.